Hi, hello. So I wanted to ask you a quick question for my YouTube video. Okay, so what does loneliness mean to you?
I think it's more of a state of mind or the perception of being alone or isolated, irrespective of the number of people that are physically around you.
When someone I care about is physically and emotionally unavailable to me.
When it started, or when I noticed it, it was kind of like because I was transitioning between seasons.
As long as humans have existed, so has the concept of loneliness, especially with the current world crisis that we found ourselves in. Maybe it's even worse. I mean, no longer can we numb ourselves with extravagant parties or the rowdiness of bustling traffic in a city or small talk with a co-worker. Do you ever find yourself in a room full of people and you still feel alone or you still feel very lonely? And so I began to wonder that maybe it's not really an external thing, maybe it's very internal.
Loneliness is common and really complex, and it's hard to understand.
It's funny how social media contributes to this, which I find a bit ironic because social media is supposed to bring people together and connect people together. But for me, sometimes it feels very alienating because I see how my friend, got a new job, or how my friend is suffering a loss, and a part of me feels bad because I then wonder, how come I didn't know? I'm like, how come my friend was in pain and I didn't know about it? So sometimes it's more isolating than it needs to be. And sometimes it just feels like everyone's talking over one another and no one is really listening. How didn't I know my friend was in pain? Aren't we friends? But on the flip side, I'm also quite guilty of this.
It's okay to be lonely. It's okay to be sad.
Now, I'd like to put a disclaimer that please don't be alarmed. This is not a cry for help. It's just something I experienced a few weeks ago and I thought I'd put it into words. So, what I realized in those moments is that loneliness manifests in different ways. Whether it's feeling like no one understands you, or being around the wrong people, or even worse, that no one cares. The interesting thing is, it doesn't even matter whether you're introverted or extroverted or somewhere in the spectrum. It affects most of us, if not all of us. And I understand how incredibly fortunate I am to have people that care about me and vice versa. I've often wondered, what part of the body do we feel loneliness? Because it's very all-encompassing. And I have to admit that sometimes trusting people isn't exactly the most fun thing to do. How do I know that this raw expression is not going to be used against me someday? More than ever, I've realized the importance of community and how there is no self-made person. Humans are the worst, but they are also the best. It's complicated.
As humans, we usually require deep and meaningful connections to survive. So when these connections are superficial, we tend to feel lonely.
We need one another, and the dynamic of human relationships can be very messy, but it can also be very beautiful. Know this and know peace, I guess. I think one of the keys is vulnerability, and that is so much easier said than done, let's face it. Because when I thought about it, the realization I came to was that there was a burden that I wasn't really sharing with anyone, which made me feel more isolated, even though I was among people.
Maybe I'm going through something and I don't think I can tell it to anybody else because they probably won't understand.
And this was such a light bulb moment for me. And so it wasn't from a lack of having people around, really. Sometimes it's unawareness of this underlying pending issue, or the fact that who really is there to tell.
Personally, I try not to bother people about my situation or whatever I'm going through, which makes me isolated.
The good thing is, I think for most people, loneliness is usually temporary.
To be honest, it's a feeling that comes and goes. And that's one of the reasons I do this, because it helps to know that there are people like that with different levels of relatability. And even if I wasn't making these videos, I'd probably still talk about these things, maybe to myself, or maybe write about them. It's out there for anyone who needs it. So please share with someone who you think needs it. For me, discovering the problem was definitely part of the solution, but that's not all, right? So what do we do about it?
Make deliberate efforts to get out of loneliness. So dancing, listening to happy things, just having happy thoughts usually helps.
Sometimes I just take a long walk. I did that a lot in school.
Try to open up to people as much as possible. It's difficult not to think you're a burden to someone. You have to be willing to make yourself vulnerable, which is a difficult thing to do.
Sometimes it's also nice to connect with people, but it would be nice to connect with people that share similar interests. So like, for example, maybe a book club.
Opening up to people as much as possible would help.
I've thrown myself into other activities that make the isolation not as bad.
Being busy when you're lonely does not chase away the feeling of being lonely, but it just tends to take your mind off that feeling for a while. Try to get active, play games, read books, listen to music. That music is a two-way something too, because sometimes the music can tend to amplify whatever you're feeling.
That's not the time where you want to start listening to all these blues and all those stuff. When you're lonely, you just feel like you want to wallow in that loneliness, and it can lead to depression sometimes.
And for some people too, I think therapy helps because of how loneliness affects our mental health. I also think giving back, so volunteering and acts of kindness can also help, because then we shift our thoughts from ourselves.
Or just knock yourself out with food. I think that works every time.